In this video, 5 different methods to draw the figure. Hello everyone, and welcome to chapter 7, 8, 9, 10 and 11 of the top 20 ways to draw the figure, explaining the 5 different mannequins you can use to draw the figure. This video will explain 5 different methods that share the same principle. They can be explained as a certain way to draw the initial mannequin that you will build up to a full figure later on. Each of these 5 methods have its own style and unique ability to reach the final goal, but they all share the same steps leading to the end goal. These methods are the joints method, the cylindrical unit method, the spherical unit method, the box unit method, and finally the simplified shape method. I will explain each technique in the following section, one by one, and then do examples on each one to make it easier to follow. Remember that the end goal of this method is to draw the base mannequin for the figure you're gonna draw. That looks like the final figure, but with a simplified way, before you go on top with the details. So let's start with the first method, the joints method. This method is based on drawing the joints of the body only, and simply connecting them with a simple line. It's simply drawing a stick figure with a purpose. After this initial step, you will only have to draw the simplified shape to connect the body, and finally you can draw the details on top of it. The benefits of using this method is you can draw the joints first before connecting them later, making sure that you don't draw the limbs longer or shorter than they really are, by suggesting the places of the joints first. Also, it's probably the easiest mannequin that you will be able to draw from all the methods in this series. The cylindrical unit method. This method is basically using a cylinder as a building block for the mannequin, using different variations of the cylinder to fit every part of the body. This will break the body into dynamic shapes that can be easily drawn without getting worried about the tiny details in each part of the body. Drawing the figure on top of it will be much easier since the basic shape of the figure is already there. The benefits of drawing the figure in cylinders is that you can basically draw the figure in any perspective that you can imagine, since you can easily draw the cylinders in perspective rather than the actual body parts. The spherical unit method. This method is the most dynamic of the 5 methods, drawing the body in dynamic opposite C's and S curves, while drawing the main torso as a peanut shape. This dynamic method will give a very lifelike look to your drawing, by not using a geometrical shape for the body, but mostly curves that imitate the actual curve of the body. The box unit method. This method is similar to the cylindrical unit method, but instead of cylinder we are using boxes here. These boxes can be shaped to represent the actual form of the body parts. We can use 2 parts of the torso or the long bending part as the whole thing. This method will make drawing the body in perspective much easier, since it's much easier to draw boxes in perspective than the actual body parts. Finally, the simplified shape method. In this method we are using the previous units and shapes in one place, breaking down the body parts of the body into simplified shapes that represent them. This will make it easier to draw the body in quick, simple shapes rather than go into details of the body. This will also make drawing different poses from imagination and memory much easier than building the body from start to finish in details. Now let's go to the pros and cons. As for the pros, all 5 methods are basically about drawing the mannequin as a first step, which can simplify the figure quite a bit and make it easier to handle. Each method here shares the same principles, but differs in the shape it uses to draw the mannequin, which give you a different option to fit your style. These methods can be used to draw the figure from memory or imagination using these mannequins. As for the cons, there are no concepts behind these methods like the one before. It's mainly a mannequin, so this makes them a bit simplistic. You need a bit of experience in anatomy to be sure you are drawing the right dimension of the body parts of the mannequin. These methods are just a first step to draw the figure. After that you have to rely on your observation skills to draw the figure on top of these mannequins, so they may not be fit for absolute beginners. Now let's see how you can use these 5 methods to draw the figure from start to finish. Here I'm gonna draw each method from start to finish. So let's start with the joints method. I start with the head, then draw the line for the shoulder, then the spine, then a line for the hips. Now I start drawing the joints, the shoulder joints. Then as you can see here, I skip to the hand, then the elbow, making sure to put them in their correct places, then I connect between them with a straight line. This will make sure that I didn't draw them longer or shorter than they actually are. Then finally I do the arm. Then the hips joints, then the knees, and finally the ankles. Now that I have the initial mannequin done, I'm gonna do the second layer, drawing the basic shapes of the body parts before finally adding the details. It's easier to draw these parts since I have the joints already done in their correct places. And now all is left is to add the details on top of the correct mannequin that I did, and I will have the figure finally done. Next, the cylindrical unit shape. Start by drawing the head as a cylinder, then the neck, then the torso in two parts. Then the arms attached to the torso in cylinders. And finally the legs. Now I have the base ready. I'm gonna add the details fast and simple on top of the mannequin. The spherical unit method is a bit different than the rest, by it being more dynamic in its lines. So I draw the head first, then the peanut shape of the torso, bending on one side and stretch on the other, as we can see in the reference photo. The arms are in opposite C's, from the upper arm to the lower arm. Same thing for the other side, and opposite C's all the way to the legs. As you can see here, the lines go around the knees and down to the feet. Then we finally add the details on top of the mannequin like we did before. The box unit method is similar to the cylindrical method, but using boxes instead. So we start the same way with the head, then the torso as one box or two boxes is totally up to you. Then the arms as boxes. On the other arm you can see the other side of the box since the arm is turning to the side. Then they draw the box of the leg wide at the top and narrow at the end. And we have our mannequin. So all we have to do now is draw the details on top of it. Finally, the simplified shape method. Here we will have the closest representation of the figure from all the previous methods. So we draw the head, then the rib cage in a simple format. Then the hip as a sphere. And we draw the lower hip and the top of the legs in a simplified shape like the underpants. And we draw the joints as spheres and the limbs as elongated cylinders that represent the actual limb shape. When you are done, you will see a very close representation of the figure as a mannequin, which will make adding the details on top much easier, since you already have 80% of the details already done. And as you can see, 5 different methods leading to the same end game, but in different solutions. So let's do 2 more examples, this time using the joint method and the spherical unit method. Again, we start with the head and the neck, then the spine and the shoulder line, then the shoulder joints. The hip line and the hip joints next. I put the hands first, then the elbow, and finally connect in between them with simple lines. Same for the other arm. Then I draw the knees and connect between them and the hips with lines. And finally the ankles and the feet. And we are done with the initial mannequin. Now we add another layer of the simplified shape on top as a second step before we start detailing. And finally we add the details on top. As for the female model, I decided to do it in the spherical method to add more life to the lines. We start with the head and the neck, then draw the peanut shape of the torso, then the opposite C's for the arm and the legs, making sure it's as dynamic as possible. Very simple and fast. And all we have to do now is add the details on top. As for the 3-minute poses, I decided to do one method for each pose in 3 minutes. It works here since these mannequins are very quick to draw and very easy to manage. So let's go for it. The joint method for the first one. This actually even took less than 3 minutes. The cylindrical shape for the second pose. The spherical for the third pose. The box unit for the fourth. And finally the simplified shape for the final pose. Let's do now the 20-minute pose. In this chapter, take your time while doing these poses. 20 minutes is a long time to finish up a pose in a very clean and calm way. I decided to draw the male figure with boxes and the female figure with cylinders, since boxes are more rigid and cylinders are more fit to the female body. So we begin the same way: the head, the torso, the arms, all in boxes. Then the legs, making sure to show the two faces of the box if the legs is rotated. And finally the other leg. All is left now is adding the details. Here, as you can see, the box shape helped with the perspective of the pose, since it's much more manageable to deal with boxes than actual limbs in perspective. For the female pose, we use the cylinders, starting with the head and the neck, then the torso in two parts. Using two parts here for the torso helps mimic the shape of the bending hips of the model. Then the arms, and finally the legs. Now we have the mannequin ready to add the details on top. Now with this next pose, take your time, a whole hour to do it. Start the same way this time, observing the model in the reference. Do all the steps and add all the details afterward. In this final pose, I decided to do the simplified shape for it since we didn't do it in the last chapters. And it is the most fitting for long poses, since you get more of the details in the initial setup. And here it is, all the steps side by side. Now let's sit back and enjoy the last painting using most of the method we previously discussed. Okay, and here is the final sheet. These 5 methods are very simple and basic to understand. There are no huge concepts behind them. They are mostly a simplified mannequin to use as a first step in building your figure drawing. You can use these methods if you are drawing live in the streets or in a live drawing session, or even to draw from imagination. The simple shapes will let you manage a good looking base model that you can build on top later on. Try to practice each method by yourself and then choose the one that fits your style the most. Before I go, I would like to thank the people who donated to my Patreon. Thank you so much for your generosity. If you'd like to support me at Patreon, please go to patreon.com/rainwalker. Thank you so much for all your help. Coming up next, the second most requested method of them all, with Glenn Vilpo's method to draw the figure. I have all his videos, old and new, and also his book about drawing the figure. So I got all I need to hopefully make a simplified video explaining his method. So that will be coming next. As for now, thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.